Hey friends, I'm so happy you stopped by. Today I'm sharing 4 Valentine's Day DIYs. As always, I used mostly Dollar Tree supplies. I really hope you enjoy them, so let's get busy. To start my Valentine's Day wreath, I'm using one of the heart-shaped wire wreath forms, and I picked this up at the Dollar Tree. I'm going to wrap the form, and I'm using some white ribbon that I had on hand. You can pretty much use any white ribbon, and the reason I'm wrapping the form is that I don't want the wires to show through. I'm adding some hot glue to one of the lower supports and then attaching my white ribbon. From there, I wrapped the ribbon around the form, and every once in a while I added on some hot glue to help hold it in place. To make the ribbon easier to work with, I did cut about 3-foot length, and it was just easier to wrap it around the heart. As I was wrapping the heart, I wasn't super fussy. I just made sure that the ribbon was overlapping itself and it was hiding those wires. I continued working my way around, wrapping the ribbon until the heart was completely covered and you couldn't see any of the wires. To add some color to my heart, I'm using 2 of these pretty Valentine's Day scarves, and I picked these up at the Dollar Tree. The end of each scarf was sewn together, so I just used my scissors to cut them free. They each have a little tag, so I made sure to remove that as well. Now that I have my 2 strips of fabric, it's as easy as wrapping them around the form. I gathered the ends of the fabric together, I turned my heart over, added on some hot glue, and attached the fabric in place. I let the glue set up for about a minute, and then I turned my heart over. I had the fabric folded in half, but it wasn't a perfect half, and then I just started wrapping it around the heart. As I was working my way around, I did keep tension on the fabric so that it stayed tightly against the heart, but if you find it kind of moving around, you can always add some hot glue in the back to help hold it in place while you're wrapping it. When I came to the end of the fabric, I hot glued the end of the scarf onto the back of my heart. To add on my second scarf, I followed the exact same instructions. I just gathered the end of the fabric, added some hot glue to the back of my heart, and attached it in place. And if you notice, I was using a finger protector while I was letting it set up and cool because the fabric on the scarf is pretty thin and it is really easy to burn yourself. With my first scarf in place, I then followed the same instructions and wrapped the second around my heart. I once again made sure to wrap it tightly around the form, and when I came to the end, I hot glued it onto the back. To add a hanger to the back of my wreath, I'm using some pink satin ribbon that I had on hand, and I cut a piece at about 3 to 4 inches. I added 2 dots of hot glue onto the back and then attached the hanger. I'm adding a bow accent onto my wreath, and I'm using my Easy Bow Maker that I picked up on Amazon. I'm using a pretty 2.5-inch sheer pink ribbon along with a 5/8 inch heart ribbon, and both of these came from the Dollar Tree. I'm also using the 5/8 inch pink satin ribbon that I had on hand. I'm starting with my 2.5-inch pink ribbon. I'm giving myself 2 10-inch tails and 6 4-inch loops. Once that's complete, I'm using my heart ribbon. I'm giving myself 2 8-inch tails and 4 3-inch loops. I'm then following it up with my pink ribbon, once again 2 8-inch tails and 4 3-inch loops. To attach my bow together, I'm using a piece of floral wire. I'm placing it over the center top, pulling it tightly and twisting it in the back. Now that I have it attached together, I'm just fluffing out the loops. To attach the bow to my wreath, I'm placing the 2 pieces of floral wire around the form and just twisting it on in the back. Now that it's attached in place, to help hold it there, I'm going to add on a little bit of hot glue. With the bow in place, you can hang your heart as is, but I'm going to add on 2 more accents. I'm adding one of these wooden love signs. They come as a 2-pack, and I picked this up at the Dollar Tree. I'm using my red acrylic paint, and I'm giving it a complete coat. Now that it's dry, I'm finding its placement in the center of my wreath, and I'm hot gluing the 2 ends in place. For my wreath's final accent, I'm using one of these small sparkly hearts, and these came from the Dollar Tree. Using my glue gun, I just attached it in the center of the bow. And with that, this pretty Valentine's Day wreath is ready to hang. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below and leaving me a thumbs up. And to all my returning friends, you know I'm always so happy to see you. Getting started on my Valentine's Day gnome, I'm using a plastic 12-inch funnel, and I picked this up in the automotive department at the Dollar Tree. After removing the label, I'm using one of the children's white athletic socks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm placing it over the end of the funnel. To hold it in place, I'm adding on some hot glue and attaching the top of the sock to the funnel. While you're attaching it, don't worry if it's not perfect because it's only meant to cover the bottom of the funnel. For my gnome's beard, I'm using this pink and white duster cloth, and I found this in the cleaning department at the Dollar Tree. Along with the duster, it comes with a plastic handle, but I put that aside because I won't be using it for this project. I opened up the back to the flat piece of fabric, and I'm adding on some hot glue. I'm now adding it on against the sock and making sure that the bottom of the duster matches up with the bottom of the funnel. For my gnome's nose, I'm using a 1.5-inch wooden knob. I had this on hand, but you can always use one of the Dollar Tree table tennis balls. I'm painting mine with some coral acrylic paint, and to make it easier to paint, there's a small hole in the bottom of the knob, so I'm just placing in a wooden skewer. Now that it's dry, I'm adding it onto my gnome, and using my hot glue gun, I'm attaching it about 1/3 down from the top of the duster. To make my gnome's hat and to cover the body, I'm using this pink and white knee sock, and I found this at the Dollar Tree. It has a little love design at the top, so I'm going to be cutting that off. Now that I have my 2 pieces, I'm placing the shorter sock with the love over the base of my gnome's body. And I tuck the front of the sock up and under the beard. I'm now adding on the longer sock as the hat, but before I do, I'm placing a handful of polyfill inside. I'm now adding it onto the gnome, and I'm placing it over the funnel. I'm making sure that the heel of the sock is on the back and opposite from the gnome's beard. With that in place, I'm now attaching the end of the sock onto the gnome's nose. I placed a line of hot glue on the top of the nose and then attached the end of the sock. To attach both the sides, I'm making sure to leave enough room for my arms, and then I'm just adding some hot glue on the side of the gnome and pulling down the hat. And after one side's complete, I then move on to the second and follow the same instructions. With the sides in place, I then attach the back of the hat by simply adding some hot glue and pulling down the sock. When I was done to close up the sock opening on the bottom, I just added in some hot glue. To make the heel on the sock not quite so noticeable, I'm just adding in some hot glue and sealing it shut. For my gnome's arms, I'm using 2 of these pink striped socks, and I found this set in the baby department at the Dollar Tree. To make my arms, I'm first lying the socks flat with the heel on the bottom. To make the arms, I'm first adding a line of hot glue on one side of the sock and rolling it. I'm then adding a line of hot glue next to the rolled edge, and I'm rolling it again. From there, I keep adding on my hot glue and rolling the sock until I come to the end. Now that my 2 arms are complete, the toe end of the sock, it makes your gnome look like he has mitten hands. So those will be showing in the front, and the other end will be tucking under the hat. I'm tucking one of the arms on the side, up and under the hat. I'm then turning my gnome over and tucking in the second arm. I made sure they were both the same length, and now using my glue gun, I'm attaching them in place. If you like making gnomes, I've made a whole bunch of them using Dollar Tree supplies, and I'll have that playlist linked below in my description in case you'd like to check it out. I'm adding on some simple accents, and I'm using this pretty heart ribbon. It's 5/8 inch, and I picked it up at the Dollar Tree. I cut a short piece, and I'm wrapping it around the end of my gnome's hat to kind of make a little ball. I then used my scissors to cut off the extra ribbon. I'm using the same ribbon, and I'm just making a simple bow to add to the front. When my bow was finished, I used my scissors and I cut off both tails at an angle. Adding it was super easy. I just placed a dot of hot glue on the front of my gnome's hat and popped it into place. I'm giving the top of my gnome's hat a little bend, so I added on some hot glue, folded it over, and held it in place. I made a smaller bow out of the same ribbon, and I attached it just above the ball on the end of the hat. For my gnome's feet, I'm using one of these wooden hearts from the Dollar Tree, and I'm giving it a coat of red acrylic paint. With the red heart now dry, I'm turning it around, adding on some hot glue, and placing down my gnome. I'm having my gnome hold a love sign, and I found this pack at the Dollar Tree. I added a small dot of hot glue to each hand and then attached the love. As my final accent for my Valentine's Day gnome, I'm using one of these small red sparkly hearts from the Dollar Tree. And all I did was add a dot of hot glue in the center of the bow and attach it. And with that, this sweet gnome is ready for Valentine's Day. To make my Valentine's couple, I'm recycling 2 pieces of wood. One is 7 inch, one is 6 inch, and they're both 1 inch wide. To keep with the Valentine's Day theme, I'm using my red and my pink acrylic paint, and I'm giving each of them a complete coat. What's really fun about these wooden people is you can change up the colors and the themes and even the pets. Now that they're dry, I want to distress them, so I'm using a piece of sandpaper and I'm just rubbing it around the edges. This step is completely optional, it's just personal preference, so if you prefer a fresh coat of paint, just omit this step. Now that I'm done, I'm attaching the two side by side using some E6000. To make their heads, I'm using two wooden knobs. They both have flat bottoms, and I already had these on hand. They're both 1 inch, although to me one looks just a bit smaller than the other. I'm painting mine with some coral acrylic paint, but you can paint them any color you'd like. To make mine a little easier to paint, I did place them on the end of a wooden skewer. Now that they're dry, I'm going to attach them to the top of my people. I'm first using a dot of hot glue and then some E6000. The hot glue will set them up quickly and the E6000 will set them up permanently. I'm giving my woman some hair and I'm using some thin variegated yarn. I'm giving her longer hair, so I wrapped it around my hand about 15 times. I cut a shorter piece of yarn and then I tied off the loops. I cut off the excess yarn and then I cut the loops in half. When I was done, I then gave it a haircut and evened off the ends. To attach it, I added a dot of hot glue on her head, made sure that the knot side was down, and then attached the hair. Once in place, I then moved a few of the strands and I put them behind her head. As my accent, I'm using a thick piece of twine. I'm wrapping it around my couple and tying it off in a knot in the center. To finish up, I just trimmed off the ends. To make their little dog, I'm using the same type of wood cut at 2 inches. For the head, I'm using a round 1/2 inch wooden bead along with 4 smaller beads. I'm once again using my E6000 to attach them together. I'm working on the 2-inch side and I placed a dot on all 4 corners. To make the legs, I then placed a bead down on each. I let it set up for about an hour. I turned it over and then I attached the bead slightly overhanging the end of the block. I'm painting mine gray because it matches my little dog Odie, and I'm using some of the Waverly chalk paint in silver lining. With the paint dry, just like the couple, I'm using a piece of sandpaper to distress it, but once again, this step is completely optional. For the dog's ears, I'm using the same yarn that I did for the hair, and I'm making a small, simple bow. I'm placing a dot of hot glue on the dog's head and then centering it on top. For the dog's tail, I'm cutting a tiny piece of yarn and I'm attaching it to the back. To give my dog a collar and a leash, I'm using some of this red and white baker's twine that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. I gave myself a length to work as the leash, and as the collar, I wrapped the twine around the dog's head. When I came to the end, I snipped off the twine and then hot glued it to the dog's neck. I made a small loop in the top of the leash and added a dot of hot glue to the knotted twine. From there, I simply attached the leash to the knotted hands. To cover the knots in the front, I'm using one of these wooden hearts from the Dollar Tree, and I placed a dot of hot glue on the center of my couple and attached the heart. This was such a fun and easy way to recycle some wood, and now my Valentine's couple and their dog are ready to display. I'm starting this project by using one of these wooden home signs that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. To give it a little accent, I'm using 2 clothespins, and these came from the Dollar Tree as well. I pulled the little metal springs out of the centers, so I ended up with 4 pieces. I'm attaching them to my sign using some of my Starbond thick glue. It sets up super quick, and I have the company linked below in case you'd like to check it out. I added some glue to the top and placed the clothespins upside down facing each other. I also made sure they were evenly spaced on both sides. For the bottom, I just followed the same instructions. It only took a couple of minutes to set up, and now using my white acrylic paint, I'm giving it a coat. When the white had dried, I used some red acrylic paint and I painted the center of the O. For my sign's backing, I'm going to use some of this red gingham fabric that I found in the craft department at the Dollar Tree. I opened it to the full sheet and placed my sign down on the fabric. Once I had my measurement, I then cut out the piece of the red gingham. I'm attaching the fabric to the back of my sign using some Mod Podge. I turned the sign over and I made sure to add a generous amount. I then placed my sign down onto the fabric and pressed it in place. I'm using one of these Dollar Tree wooden hearts that happens to fit perfectly over the O on the sign. And I'm giving mine a coat of pink acrylic paint. Now that it's dry, I'm adding some hot glue around the O on my home sign and I'm attaching it in place. To cover the hanger hole on the heart, I'm using some of this red and white gingham ribbon, and I picked this up at the Dollar Tree. I made a simple bow and cut both tails off at an angle. I then attached it over the hanger hole on the heart. For the hanger, I used some red ribbon that I had on hand, and I glued a piece on the back of my sign. And with that, my home sign is ready to hang. Can you believe it? Here we are at the end of the video, and I really hope you enjoyed making these Valentine's Day DIYs with me. If you're new to my channel and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to hang out with her again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below. And if you're looking for more DIY projects, check out the playlists. I'll have them linked at the end of my video. I hope you all have the best day, and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody!